and try to recoup and spend some time with family and hit the ground running right after the new year. So we'll be back on the first Monday of the year, and looking forward to building this podcast with everyone. And again, I'm going to just say it in the beginning of the show right now. I want to thank each and every one who has reached out, who has come and participated. Miguel, when did we start this? February, March 2025?
I want to say it was March.
March 2025. And we've almost done every Monday live since we've started. And we are live on YouTube, we're live on Instagram, we're live on Facebook. You know, how these podcasts kind of roll is the fact that, you know, we do this live show on Monday, and then by Friday, it's up either on all the social media platforms as well as TikTok and everywhere else. So you want to be a guest, you want to be a part of this conversations like all the previous supporters, reach out. I mean, there's many ways that you can do that, but you can always come and talk to me directly. You have a story to share when it comes to being from here. You're growing food, you make food, you are an advocate for food, you're an advocate for nature, you're an advocate for community. I think after Miguel and I having a simple, quick conversation before the show started, I think we both need a psychiatrist and a mental health coach, you know, because we we sure can need that, you know. So, you know, reaching out even in that kind of realm, and let's have this conversation of being neighbors, you know, with nature always in mind and nature always guiding us, no matter who we are or what we are. Let's have this conversation. With this, also, I'm going to carry on these conversations that Josh and I have started and have brought forward. I'm a little bummed that a little bit about a solstice event that is coming up, because winter solstice is coming. It's going to be early Sunday morning, the 22nd of December. What does all of this mean? The solstice is obviously, a lot of people know it as the first day of winter. We all have, you know, our seasons that we want to call winter, spring, summer, and fall, right? But we're in California, Central Coast of California, and so, you know, we've been experiencing 80-degree days in December. Yes, the nights are a little chilly, but 40s, you know, high 30s. So really not even a frost in a sense. We've had frost, but we're not cold enough to really say things are dormant yet as a farmer. So this is definitely, you know, kind of having a little bit of an Indian summer is what they call. I don't even know where that phrase has actually come from, but it's we carry along the summer. And the next couple of weeks, the forecast is showing that we're going to be getting rain and that we should be getting colder. And hopefully we'll get that cold enough to be able to put our hardy perennials into dormancy. The dormancy means that the plants are sleepy, right? So winter solstice, what does that mean? Winter solstice means that it's the shortest day of the year. From that point on, we're going to start gaining sunlight. You know, summer, being the first day of summer in June, is always the longest day of the year. So that's when we have the most sunlight per that day. Winter, first day of winter, is the shortest day. So this was the minimum, you know, these next few days are going to be the minimest days of sunlight that we are going to be able to absorb and see. So it's so important. People in our world have become afraid of the sun, or, you know, can't be in the sun. But, you know, the sun provides vitamin D. And it also creates photosynthesis in our plants. You know, it allows the sugars to be, you know, processed and absorbed into the plant. And so there's a lot to be grateful for the sun. I am that person that my body feels so much better when it's warmer outside. I don't function as well in the wintertime or in the cold time, but maybe it's because my genetics are naturally closer to the equator. So, you know, as we get further away from the equator, that imaginary line that separates the north and the south of the earth, you know, we tend to naturally get less light, right? So just think in the northern hemisphere, they're getting minutes of sunlight, if at all any right now. And here we are in beautiful sunny California, that I'm looking out at the Templeton Gap, is what it's called, out my glass doors here, and watching the sunset still, which it's what, 5:15, 5:20 right now, p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and the sun is still, there's still light outside. So winter solstice to us as farmers is much more than just the celebration of the days are going to start getting longer. My mom, God rest her soul, it was funny. So for the 47 years of life that I had her on this earth with me, every winter solstice, we would celebrate the fact that summertime was coming. And I would get, even when I wasn't with her, I'd get a call that would say, happy more day of sunlight. Like it was that kind of a celebration. So solstice to me always reminds me of those phone calls that I would get in the celebration of the first day of winter, knowing that the sun is coming more from this point on. So, but as a farmer, it's so incredibly important to understand the days of the calendar. But even as a human, it's also incredibly important to understand it too, because when we don't get vitamin D, when we don't get exposures to the sun, and there's a balance, right? It's if you have too much and your skin tones can't take the sun, you have to manage it. You have to monitor it, to be aware of it. It's understanding where you are in your own human body to be able to absorb it. Not all so-called bad things are always bad, right? And the sun is one of those things. I constantly hear, oh, cover up. You got to be able to, cover your skin in the sun, and I understand where they're coming from, because the fear of skin cancer, the fears of what the sun might create is, scary. But at the same time, a balance of it is important. And that is also in farming. Just like I said about photosynthesis, plants are not healthy without getting the right amount of sunlight. Even in the deep forest beds of, different types of forestry, like when you go to Santa Cruz and you're in the redwood forest, and a lot of the underground, like the ferns and the low growing plants that don't get very much sunlight, still thrive. But guess what? The flower and fruiting is also different, because plants that don't need or don't acquire as much sun don't absorb their sugars and proteins as much as plants that do get the sun. So there's a lot to this, right? And understanding how important the sun really becomes. But solstice is even that time as a farmer to know where we are in our soils. For instance, as a beekeeper, knowing that the queen bee at this point, as winter solstice starts to approach, she is going to start becoming more active, because, the more sun the beehive accumulates or has access to, the more the queen will start to lay eggs for her brood population. Understanding that, as summer, the first day of summer, that's a rescinding time where she's reclusing back in to slowing down the amount of eggs that she would be laying. As I'm sitting here talking about eggs and queen bee, yes, she's going to start rearing up again and starting her production again. A lot of us don't see a lot of eggs starting to be laid as beekeepers until February, or even middle of January, February, March, because it's about that time is when they all start to see the sun and start to get more exposure. And remember, if you're a beekeeper, bees don't come out of the hive if the temperatures are not rising above 55 degrees. So there's also the temperature factor. So if it was just one thing, it would be easy to keep track of it. But knowing that there's so much to it, but understanding the basics of where we are in the calendar or where we are in time is truly an easy way to understand how you're feeling, or what the soil is feeling, or what we should be eating, or how we should be exercising, how we shouldn't be exercising. Knowing what we're consuming is going to be truly the definition of how we're going to carry on. It's exactly the same way as a farmer, and understanding what I need to do to recognize that soil in order to know what I'm going to do these next steps. And celebrating the solstices, winter and summer, are the biggest points as a calendar year for us growers. And so, everything in the between is like, when is fall and when is spring? Those mean that we're at that halfway point. We're halfway there to that next stage. So what we didn't get done in that first stage of spring or fall, we only have a few more weeks. If we're going to get it finished, get it producing by the time summer solstice comes or winter solstice comes, we only have a short period of time. So see, understanding that each day, each time of the calendar means something is also the indicator of where we are as humans in our own body. As I said, reach out if you have a story to tell, or or a resource that you want to share. I think there's a lot to be said about behaviors during this time of the year. We can sit here and say, oh, it's the holidays, like I said when I walked into with Miguel, saying, there's things that go on in each other's lives that you put yourself out there and you become vulnerable to certain things, and or you're rewarded because you're putting yourself out there, right? But there's always an interpretation. There's always going to be an argument. There's always going to be that one or two or three people that are going to disagree when you put yourself out there. And I'm going to tell each and every one of my listeners, because I have been getting some really cool comments about our podcast, meaning, thank you for speaking up, or, Melanie, where do you find the time to do all of this? Or, your passion shows through the podcast. You and Josh are a good mix, because he's got a strong voice, but you can stand up against his strong voice too. I mean, these are the comments that I'm getting. But there's also some negative things too of, and it all resorts back to politics or family or behaviors. And, whether I truly believe is the trigger, and also knowing where we are in the moon phase, because the force of gravity, I think, pulls on different people. If your body is full of sugar and, dehydrated, you're going to get exposed to that full force of gravity a little differently than a hydrated, minerally rich body. So understanding where behaviors change and how we react to things is also how we treat our body. So understanding where we are right now, yes, we have a week and 2 days until Christmas. Yesterday started Hanukkah, but knowing where we are in the calendar too. We're halfway there. Christmas is coming. All I'm going to do is wish everyone a time right now, before the craziness of these holidays kick on. Maybe let's work on getting rid of perception and expectations first, and really work on self-awareness, self-motivation, self-preservation. Protect yourselves, and also self-enjoyment, right? Don't look to others for your own enjoyment. Don't look to others for your own personal gratification. Be strong in with who you are, instead of thinking that somebody else needs to help make you that way. And the reason why I'm saying that is because, as a farmer and as somebody that really truly works with nature, it's crazy to understand how Mother Nature takes its course. But it's also really crazy to see how giving, understanding, and how rewarding nature gives to its own, meaning how the soil has been rebuilding, how plants and animals that I thought were never going to come back and be strong in their population are coming back. I got a phone call today with Creston Valley Meats from a potential new customer. And it was pretty cute, because he said that he wanted to try to start raising these animals years ago for the meat industry. And it was the people that he had reached out to at that time were like, oh, you don't want to raise those. Those are this, those are that. You don't want to do that. You're just going to lose a bunch of money and you're not going to profit. And that's not really that good of meat. He's sharing all this stuff with the information that he had received from those other people. And I asked him, I said, did you ask them if they've ever raised that breed? And he's like, no, I didn't. And I'm like, well, then did you ask him if they've ever harvested one of those species before? And he said, actually, I did. And he goes, this is when I said to myself, I wasn't going to give up on my ideas, because none of them had ever harvested them. So how could they talk about the meat when they themselves have never had their hands involved in it to be able to give that advice, right? They're giving an overall. They were also giving a lot to what they were reading in the newspaper or reading in their market journals. What does the market say right now, right? And so, I laugh, because in California, if you were to read the market report right now, and you're a cannabis grower, market report would not be looking very good right now. And I cannot believe that after all these years, California cannabis growers are struggling the way that they are. It's mind-blowing to me, because our soils, our environment, everything is benefit in growing really good cannabis. but at the same time, rules and regulations and competition that did not evenly compete, and the tax structures and all this stuff that has been hurting our cannabis growers. But now, because federally there is the potential of changing it and allowing it to become a federal recognized crop, all of a sudden the markets are skyrocketing, and everybody that has been invested in the stock of cannabis are now profiting. But is farmers profiting? Is the actual soil of where cannabis is being grown profiting? Those are those questions that I constantly have. So back to the customer that was new and chose not to listen to people that were in the industry that he was seeking advice for to get into the industry. Here he is, ready and mature. He's got animals that are matured and ready to go. Well, guess what? The beef industry is high right now because the numbers aren't there. The tariffs and import export, the fly, fires, floods, disease, minimal grass vegetation to be able to range our animals on. All of that has truly contributed to the higher prices in beef. And now here this gentleman is coming, and everything about the species that he chose to breed has been suitable for raising in California wildlands, and also dealing with how he was able to kind of keep them controlled and under management during wildfires, But at the same time too, is also realizing now the last couple of years of fires where his ranch is, how sweet and good the grass is where those cattle have been being raised. And so what I'm saying to all of this, it's, you take the word of somebody else. You take my words. Listen to me. I'm sitting here talking to you on a podcast. You take my words, but I'm sharing my story. Those consultants or those other people that are in there, they're sharing hopefully their stories. Majority of consultants now are only giving you advice on what they've read versus what they've done. And then that's where the sad thing is. It's like, do you want to learn from somebody that just read about it, or do you want to learn from somebody that has taught or that has actually done it to be able to teach it? And in making those decisions in where you get your advice or where you get your information. And as we come up to the holidays, there's so much out there that people think they know. And the sad thing is they only know what they have been told, right? But they actually really don't know. And this is what I'm saying. Instead of sharing something that you're really unsure of or unaware of, do we really need to share it during the holidays? Because this is this time of the year when we all should just be reflecting and be grateful and taking from what we have done the year before and looking at the positive day of the 25th and going, okay, well, wherever you stand in your beliefs, from that point on, we are to live in gratitude and reward for what has been given to us, right? And it's not about all those presents that are under the tree. It's also the freedom, the time, the resources, the environments. I'm talking to hopefully mostly people from California. We've been through major challenges here in this state, but look what we get to walk out and enjoy. It's a little chilly today, but it has been so beautiful the last couple of days. And I can't tell you how grateful I am to know that even with the struggles and challenges that I have had as a business, as a farmer, that I can actually sit here and say that, well, at least I got to enjoy the sun, and I'm working on my health because it feels good outside. And looking towards 2026, as I say that, I can't believe that I'm saying that. That sounds like it. I feel like I'm in a fairy tale. Like it doesn't seem real that it's 2026. I'm looking at it going, okay, now that I have kind of did some big changes in the last 2 years, I have now created an infrastructure that we can all grow on. Josh and I have got some really good, exciting plans ahead for the podcast. I have some exciting plans for Nature's Touch Nursery and Harvest. Creston Valley Meats has got a lot of things coming up and going. So I'm really looking forward to 2026. I can't believe how fast 2025 has gone by. But I truly believe that politically wise, I never would have thought that there would be more discussions about words that we've all been using around here, but a lot of in my small farming community that I work with, that I get advice from or get ideas or suggestions or how-tos from. But I mean, the word regenerative agriculture, who would have thought that we would have an administration that would talk about that? Who would have thought that we would have an administration that would talk about the true health effects of pharmaceuticals, vaccines, different types of chemicals that are being allowed in food? I feel like, politically wise, it's just gross because we become one side versus the other. But as a human in this state, let alone living in America, who would have thought that it would have been acceptable to put chemicals into food and or chemicals that are being used to allow food to be on a grocery store shelf that, for instance, eggs. I heard that there's another another egg recall because of viruses. The only reason why those viruses are there is because of how old those eggs are and how long it took to get to the grocery store shelf, how quick and fast production has happened and temperature changed, and food was never supposed to be like this. But yet certain types of chemicals are being applied to prevent these viruses and bacteria from happening, which, where does any of that make sense? When just because we want a dozen eggs every week, are we really, really willing to take the risk of what we're really being exposed to? And are we really consuming food as nourishment or as medicine? I mean, I'll be honest with you, just talking eggs, you're getting nothing when those eggs are that old and or that exposed to what they've been exposed to be able to get them legal to the grocery store shelf. When do we as an American society, why would we buy this? I mean, it's crazy to me to hear this administration talk about it now. But I know so many people that have known better that this was going on and chose to just look the other way because it was industry or it was marketing. Just like how I talked about the cannabis industry. Here in California, most of our cannabis growers are struggling, and they're, the distributing and everything that, and the taxes and everything that's been going on for our poor cannabis people, as well as our wine industry too. But now because we're talking about it federally, the markets of cannabis, anybody that invested in cannabis stock is making money. How do you make money when you're not producing for a good quality? How do you make money when something as simple as a federal government can change the direction and the talk, and then the markets react to that? Why wouldn't the markets react to the fact that places like California that have been growing beautiful cannabis, and it was strong when cannabis was illegal, but illegal, and then when it became legal, it was still strong. But then all these other implementations that have killed it. But yet now that the feds are talking about it, the market is increasing. This does not make sense. And why, as Americans, would we be okay with that? Just like these words, regenerative, right? Like, we know regenerative agriculture as you've done a method of farming and you want to change the direction of the chemical applications that you've been doing, and you want to build soil. You want to focus on the soil. You want to be better about the soil. Sad thing is that's what organic originally started out to be. Organic was never meant to just be a claim on a label. It was actually the true representation of clean, honest food. It was that you were going to plant a seed into healthy soil, and what that fruit or that production that you got from that seed being planted was going to give you the best mineral value, mineral added, the best medicine that you could ever get when you were buying organic. Now, today, it's been so diluted and so marketed that it doesn't really mean anything, right? So it's, there's organic farmers out there still, yes, but they've been. But do we just buy by a label and risk the chance that we're not even getting what we pay for? That's what I'm so afraid of with this whole administration now talking and really pushing money. Because honestly, what is government? Government is just a diversion of money. And it's now they're diverting it from one side to the other. Yes, okay. Did pharmaceuticals really need to have the amount of money just given to them for it? I don't know one person that eats organic or lives, biodynamically or regeneratively or organically, that has gone into an emergency hospital and doesn't want that emergency hospital there, right? We know we need pharmaceuticals. We know we need a good balance of health and medicine. But at the same time, where are we at in the middle? Why do we go from one side to the other instead of staying neutral in the sense of, yes, this is important, yes, this is important, but one is not supposed to override the other? And that is where I'm coming with this whole cannabis thing. It's like, I hope federally, if this happens and they change the whole outlook of cannabis federally, that we can find a seat at the table for our California growers to be able to not be even more drowned in a Wall Street mentality concept when it comes to cannabis. I hope this gives our cannabis growers, our true cannabis growers, not the illegal ones. You should know your cannabis that you're buying just like you know your food, guys. Yes, if you're going to go buy it in a dispensary, they are supposed to be transparent. But I'll be honest with you, I went into a dispensary a couple months ago and they're not being honest about where it's coming from. So I'm never going to tell you where I went, but at the same time, you need to know where you get even that, right? And at the same time, just because it's cannabis, please, if you have a teenager that you know is smoking cannabis, please talk to that child. Try to manage that. And yes, it's an herb, but it's not an herb that should be a free for all, just like alcohol. But, just know that it's, know your cannabis like you know your food. And understanding, I hope, if I could put my words out there, and hoping that Americans would rise up and actually take more responsibility for their purchases. I cannot express this even more now with everybody so focused on Christmas gifts, right? What are we doing? When we're buying a bunch of stuff that person may or may not use, what are we doing? What are we supporting, and what are we leading by? Yes, gift giving is important. But the amount of time that you could give to one individual and spending time with that human being, or understanding the true value of love. Love is not by giving a material thing. Love is given by that sense of feelings, that sense of intimacy, and sharing time, sharing stories, sharing knowledge, giving within the time that you have on this earth. I hope that these words focus on a different direction of where we've all been going these last several years when it comes to these holidays, because I know how I'm feeling, and everybody else that I'm talking to is kind of feeling the same way. Like, we're all kind of like, there's so much stress, but how do we alleviate that stress? We got to start working on ourselves. We got to start focusing within ourselves to be able to make our world better. And 2026, all I'm going to say is my New Year's resolution is always going to be about being better today so I can continue to be better tomorrow. I have to focus on making sure that I'm spending time with the people that really truly matter, making sure that I am not wasting time and not consuming foods that I really don't need, except for the handful of candy I put in my mouth before I came into the studio here. But again, once in a while, not a big thing. If I was indulging in it all the time, it'd be a whole nother story. But at the same time, I hope that, from this point, as I'm standing here by myself, talking to Miguel, but talking to a computer screen, but at the same, I hope that we can all move forward. This is also my way of just thanking everyone for giving me the 2025 year of good that I received. It's giving me a whole different perspective on where I'm going as a farmer, where I'm going as a business person. I've realized even more after going to Madison, Wisconsin, and doing different groups that I've been involved in. I'm also now on the board of the Latino Outreach Council Board for San Luis Obispo County. So I have some new and upcoming excitement things that I will also be sharing here. But also just what I've been exposed to in this last year that has really truly defined who I am is really important to know that I have to stay the course. There's so much that has been built, and there's so much that is being neglected in what has been built. We've had a generation of people that have built amazing things, but we don't have the generation coming up behind that generation to carry things on. For some reason, I had a meeting on Friday with the marketing crew, and the discussion became how many people that come into something or buy something of existing, why do they want to destroy that and start over from scratch? They just bought it. Why do they want to start over new? Why don't they just say, or why can't they look at it, what they have, and build from that? And you maybe change the direction, maybe change the coloring, maybe change, maybe the way that they grow something or the way that they market something, but they already have the infrastructure. I have had so many consulting jobs this year of new people that have bought new farms, new farm businesses that was the first thing they did was got in, seen what they can do to change it. And then why I was called was because once they started realizing that they were going to either have to take things down to studs, or that the permits to reissue a new permit, doing it differently, was going to cost 3 times the amount of what the original permit would have cost, and so many people that have reached out to me for this, consulting type work, they were super excited about the infrastructures and the entity that they bought, but they never were able to shadow the original owners or the original creators, whether it be that their escrow closed and here it is, here's the key, see ya, or sadly, the amount of people who have passed away or moved away and just walked away from infrastructure that most things cannot be rebuilt, and that's the other thing. It's like, even though this infrastructure is there, there's also those decisions to be made. Is it worth buying it at what it's being cost? Because if you're going to farm it, you're going to use this for a farming entity. How are you ever going to recoup the amount of money that you just put out in purchasing that farm or that farm business? Meaning, okay, so you bought it for $1 million, and then it cost you $10 million to operate it. So right off the first year, you're at $11 million. How are you going to, make a profit on $1 a pound, and you can only get, 500 pounds of product out of it? Understanding those kind of concepts of what it is that you're buying, but realizing it as a consultant that has been brought into this is realizing how many businesses that are out there right now, that there are people in limbo that just, they had the means to buy these companies with either walked away or deceased, but they don't have the knowledge or the energy to take what's already there and build from it. They want, just got hit by something. They want to take it down and cost more. So again, this is where we as a society, we as Americans, we got to start to decide the true cost of food, the true cost of farming, the true cost of living, right? Where is our balance when all of this comes into play? This is what I'm saying. If you can't afford it, don't buy it. Let's figure out a way that we can do things more cost effectively so that we stop increasing the cost. Just like I'm going back to the markets. Just because the federal government said they're going to change cannabis, why did the markets increase? Because they know that there's going to be money diverted, right? So that's how the market works. But yet, does that mean that there's more cannabis coming to market? So if there's more cannabis coming to market, that means the cost of cannabis should go down, correct? No, that's not how Wall Street works. Wall Street is going to umbrella all this, and it's going to be a lot more controlled. It's going to be a lot more taxed. It's going to be a lot more money diversion from one side to the other. I want to be wrong, but I have not been wrong in that category in a really long time. But I'm terrified right now with the fact that, I'm happy, but I'm scared, if this makes any kind of sense. I'm happy that the government is talking about regenerative and being recognized of how important it is to have healthy soils in order to have healthy food. I like that the government is really focusing on American made and American produced. But how do we do all of that when how many Americans do you know actually know how to produce anything anymore? Because we've been relying on countries that have been making it for us a lot cheaper at the cost of what? So most of our system has not been able to learn from doing, right? They've only been taught by being told, but they have not, just like in our local university teaches organic as a theory, not as a practice, right? So how do you learn how to farm organically if you're only taught it as a theory? So those are some big questions that I would like some feedback on it. So if you are next to your computer listening to, or your phone listening to our podcast, start reaching out, type it into comments, and share your questions, share your thoughts with us, and where you think that this is all going. And, also share your concerns about all of these words that are going on and all this talk that is happening right now. I'll tell you honestly that this new administration, when it comes to USDA, I have never, in all my years of farming and dealing with USDA or the state of California and food regulations, I've never seen an administration talk about changing something and it implementing as fast as it is. But in California, I'm also seeing the same thing. The gas tax, or now we're talking about a mileage tax, and everybody's like, oh, I'll just report differently. You realize you have to get your car smogged, and more than likely it's going to go off your smog. When you smog your car, they're going to then turn around and tax you for the miles you drove when you get your car smogged. That hasn't gone in yet, but I can't believe that the talk of that has already moved so fast, and the implementation of it is happening just as fast. That's what I'm saying. Federally wise, working with USDA, when it comes to food safety, I'm shocked about how fast they'll talk about it, pass a bill, get it signed, and how quickly it gets implemented. I've never seen things getting implemented as fast as they are, which, I feel like the rug is being shaken a little bit. I'm excited on a lot of it, but I'm also sad about others because, for the last, since 2004, all of us have been focusing on the Food Safety Modernization Act because we were forced to. We had to. If we wanted to continue to farm, if we wanted to continue to produce food, we had to comply. We had to be permitted. We had to have this. We had to have that. But now the talk of not having those type of regulations, the stringent regulations, is starting to happen. So where do we fit in? We're as ones that have been complying, where do we fit in? I'm focused on saving that infrastructure, right? People that haven't been complying or wanting to, or that want to get into the industry, they won't have the infrastructure. So how do we get this all together and connect what we all are trying to do? Whether you want to comply with government or you don't. Sadly, I own things, so I can't just do it illegally, because you do it illegally and you get caught, they have the right to sue you. So, good thing I have good attorneys, I guess. But, at the same time, you have to comply to these extents, where people that haven't, now there's a little bit more of a broader wonder of how certain things are going to play out when it comes to the food safety. There's a lot, as you can see, you guys, and a lot that I can continue to have this conversation with. But I would like some more of a approach. I love my text messages that come through on my phone. I know all of you guys that have my cell phone number, and I get these text messages via text, and I'm super happy. But I would like to have them out on our social media and or emailing us in. Next year, in January, when we come back, I'm going to have it dialed in where you can call in, while we're on the show, and call in or text in. So we'll be able to directly answer all of your questions right when you call in. So I think we're pretty close in knowing the times of where we are. What time is it? I got 7 minutes left. Well, I'm pretty close in that, and at the same time, I think I pretty much captured all of it. Just to let everybody know, CrestonValleyMeats.com. We have a bunch of of new products that I just added to our website for, your Christmas holiday dinners, your New Year's holiday dinners. If you don't see something on our website, reach out to us, 805-286-5651. That's that cell phone that goes directly to me. But again, CrescentValleyMeats.com. Also, too, did you guys know that we do a raw pet food line? It is all about knowing the ingredients, knowing every bit of what comes into our plant is all USDA inspected. So you got to realize I'm not only just about feeding healthy food to humans. I'm also an advocate about feeding healthy food to animals as well. So, reach out if you don't understand what raw food is, for pets. I have a lot to teach because you got to realize that dogs, especially, naturally, they want raw. They don't, when they're out hunting, they don't go and find the local oven or the local stove to cook their prey on, right? They need the raw materials in order to really have a good digestive tract. Have you noticed how animals are dealing with different elements now? Your pets are dealing with different elements now. Yes, a little bit of environment, but 99% of it is all consumption. So knowing what foods you're feeding your pets could also alleviate those trips to the vet. And understanding what raw food does for your animals is where you're going to alleviate those trips to the vet. So CrescentValleyMeats.com. Remember, on our website, it is, if it says USDA on the description, that is for human consumption. If it doesn't have USDA, it's for pet quality. So we feed both. Order it directly from our website. And guess what? Click on Templeton Pickup, and all you have to do is come to Nature's Touch Tuesday through Saturday and pick up your order here. I bring them all our orders in. When I'm out there, I pick them up and I bring them here. So you guys don't have to drive. So the plant's about 42 minutes from Templeton. So you don't have to drive out there. You can actually come right to Templeton. But also, for all my listeners here, there, and everywhere, so starting in January, we're going north every week. So we're going all the way to Auburn, and then Thursday and Friday. And then we go all the way to San Diego we load Monday. So we go to San Diego Tuesday, and then we come home Wednesday. So we go all the way down to San Diego, and then several drops all the way up. So we go down the 5, come up the 101 to come home. And so we have a lot of delivery spots. So even if you're not in this area, we'd be happy to deliver into your community so you can pick up your human or pet quality meats that is all harvested, processed under USDA at Crescent Valley Meats. So CrescentValleyMeats.com. Still wondering who I am? I'm Nature's Touch Nursery and Harvest. .store is the website. So if you ever want to know who I am, that's my website. You can totally check out, and or come into Templeton on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturdays when I'm here. But starting next week, we're actually going to be open. We're going back to Mondays. Monday through Saturday, we're going to start opening back up at Nature's Touch Nursery and Harvest in Templeton. So reach out. I kind of threw this all together because we found out Josh Late was coming in, not going to be able to make it. So what we thought we were going to talk about, I had to kind of wing it. So you can kind of probably see it in this show. But at the same time, again, I can't thank each and every one of you enough for all the love and support that we've been receiving. We're not going to be here the next 2 Mondays because it's Christmas week and then New Year's week. But then we'll be here the following week with a whole new attitude and looking forward to 2026. So I wish each and every one of you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And take care. Appreciate it.